As you gaze at a map of Europe, take a moment to appreciate the profound history that permeates the modern cities and nations. A history intricately entwined with the Unetice culture and its seminal role in the rise of the Balto-Slavs and Germanics. The Unetice culture did not appear out of nowhere. It emerged instead from the intricate fusion of two distinct cultures, the corded ware and bell beaker cultures in Central Europe. This amalgamation of cultures led to the birth of the Unetice culture, a civilization that would go on to leave indelible marks on the annals of human history. The Unetice people were renowned for their advanced metalworking skills, carving intricate designs into bronze and gold, and their wide-reaching trade networks which spanned across Europe. But perhaps the most significant contribution of the Unetice culture was its descendants. It is widely believed that the Unetice culture sired the Balto-Slavs and Germanics, playing a pivotal role in shaping the ethnic landscape of Europe. The cultural practices, societal norms, and technological advancements of the Unetice culture were passed down through generations, influencing the evolution of these future societies. In the end, the Unetice culture, a blend of different cultures, left a lasting legacy that continues to shape Europe today. As we explore the vibrant and diverse cultures of modern Europe, it's essential to remember the ancestral roots that gave rise to them. The Unetice culture, a significant precursor to the Balto-Slavs and Germanics.
In this video, we'll be taking a look at the autosomal DNA, predicted phenotype, traits, and of course the GED match results of 4 individuals belonging to this culture in Poland, this Unetice culture. The 4 individuals I arbitrarily named Stacy, Tatiana, Anthony, and Harley. Now, Stacy is a woman with mitochondrial lineage K1b. Tatiana is a woman with mitochondrial lineage U4, maternal lineage. She got this lineage from her mom got this lineage from her mom, and so on and so forth, until at some point there was a mutation and they had a different lineage, and that's where K1b and U4 and all these other maternal lineages ultimately have common ancestors. But that's far beside the point. Anthony also has the same maternal lineage as Tatiana. Harley has the same maternal lineage as Stacy. Both of them have K1. Now, Anthony is actually the only man here. He's a man, he's got Y DNA, he's got a Y haplogroup, he's got a Y chromosome, and his Y haplogroup is G2A, very stereotypically Caucasian actually, Y DNA. We're gonna start with the phenotype of Stacy. So Stacy's got brown eyes, snub-shaped nose, and either brown or black hair. Okay, when it comes to the eye shape prediction for her based on 7 SNPs is that she's got Middle Eastern eye shape. And on the right you can kind of see some relevant genotypes from her file. You can take a pause and observe. I'm not gonna go through all of this. Now we're moving on to Anthony, and Anthony is probably the lightest color individual here. It looks like he's got brown or hazel eyes, but I'm betting more on the hazel rather than brown because he does have blue haplotype 2. Although he has some other genotypes in the OCA2 region that are really exotic, but he does have blue haplotype 2, so that's why I'm guessing it's more hazel rather than brown for him. In terms of the eye color, he's got a Greek-shaped nose and he's got red or brown hair. Very interesting. There is actually a big chance of red hair for him because of his genotype in MC1R. But it's still a little bit less than brown. He's still more likely to have brown hair than red. And for the eye shape prediction, his eye shape prediction is actually Estonian, so Northern European facial morphology. Now we're moving on to Tatiana. Tatiana is the darkest individual here. So she's got brown eyes, she's got a Greek-shaped nose, and she's got black hair. When it comes to the blue eye haplotypes, she does not have blue eye haplotype 2 or 4. No blue haplotype 2, therefore also no blue haplotype 3. We know that for a fact. When it comes to BEH1, we don't really know that for sure. She does have a genotype that's predictive of having BEH1, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say that she probably has blue eye haplotype 1. But that's not gonna matter all that much, and it's not gonna make her blonde, and it's not gonna make her blue-eyed. She's very dark color. Her eye shape prediction is actually Middle Eastern, so overall she was probably very Mediterranean or Middle Eastern looking, like Spanish or some kind of Greek or something, but definitely not like Polish or German. And finally we arrive at Harley. This is probably the worst quality file out of all of these. However, just based on stuff that's in the file, she probably has hazel eyes, hazel or brown eyes. She's probably got a Greek shaped nose, and she's probably got some kind of hair color that's not red. Some blonde, brown or black, something that's not red in terms of the hair color. That's pretty much the only thing we can say on the basis of this file. In regards to the eye shape, the predicted eye shape for her is actually African eye shape. Once again, kind of crazy. But Estonian does come second after African in terms of the percentages, and it's a pretty comparable percentage, so I guess it's not that bad. And this was only done with 6 SNPs. None of these samples have East Asian EDAR, have derived variants in EDAR that peak in East Asia. So all of these people are very European in facial morphology. That's pretty much all there is to it. We're gonna look at Tatiana's result with the Eurogenes K13, and with all the other GED match calculators. I'm gonna be showing you Tatiana. Tatiana's file is the highest in quality. Now what's interesting about Tatiana is very typical, very stereotypical Northern European. I mean, there is nothing crazy in this result at all. She isn't even scoring any East Mediterranean. She's not scoring that much Siberian or East Asian. Some exotic components you would expect her to score, she's lacking. One component that's very interesting that she's scoring is West Asian and South Asian. This kind of West Asian and South Asian affinity seems to be absent in modern Northern Europeans. However, if you look at Europeans from the Bronze Age, we all had this South Asian and West Asian affinity, especially Northern Europeans. We lost it as time went on. We had our own genetic drift, and we drifted further from these people. That's why nowadays we don't really score 13.5% Baloch with Harappa World, for example, and 2% South Indian. That would be atypical for a Northern European, but for a Bronze Age Northern European, that's very much normal. Actually, according to the Oracle, it's pretty normal for a modern European as well. But I'm just saying. So, this is what she scores with PondDNA LK10, and this actually kind of looks like my mom's result. Very funny, but I think this is an atypical result, and maybe this is the result of the calculator being small in terms of the SNPs it looks for, and the file is also not the greatest quality, so maybe that intersected together to give this kind of a result. But this would be an atypical result, in my opinion, for Unetice people as a whole. It's very Caucasus shifted, it's very Eastern, clearly Eastern hunter-gatherer and Caucasus shifted, clearly shifted away from the farmers and the west of Europe. With the Oracle, I think we're going to be seeing, Lithuanian and Lesgian, stuff like that, basically a mixture of Baltic plus some kind of Caucasian. I think this is an atypical result for a Unetice person. This is what she scores with Ancient Eurasia K6, very interesting result. Once again, I think kind of atypical for a Unetice person, kind of high proportion of the ancestral North Eurasian component here. I would expect it to be more like 16 or 15% in reality, and this is what she scores with Gedrosia K3. Once again, I don't really see it's an okay result, right? But I think East Eurasian here should be more like, I don't know, 4 or 3% instead of 9. Alright, now we're gonna look through some of the results with my trait predictor. So let's start with Tatiana. For polygenic risk scores, Tatiana has got the following scores. So she's got above average score for schizophrenia for Northern Europeans. I don't know about above average. This looks like pretty much just average. Pretty much just average score for type 2 diabetes, and it looks like above average, slightly above average score for Alzheimer's. Alright. So she's heterozygous for common Med variation. She's between warrior and warrior. However, it looks like she is a warrior in MAOA, so both MAOA and COMT are enzymes that break down dopamine. In this case, in reality of her actual phenotype, how quickly she breaks down dopamine, she's probably breaking down dopamine rather slowly, rather more warrior than warrior overall, is what I'm saying. Okay, so she does not have any draft variants for European lactose persistence. Very interesting. Now, I'm kind of surprised because I was expecting these Unetice people to have these variants, because most of their modern descendants do, but I guess that's not the case. Very interesting. I guess I'll have to go and look for more Unetice samples to really get a good picture here. For OXTR, she seems to have 2 variants for higher levels of empathy in this variation of OXTR. Most likely not East Asian. Indeed, that's true. She's definitely not East Asian. She's got this genotype right here, which leads to 7-fold decrease in risk of type 1 diabetes. Does not have type 1 diabetes. Really good for her. For Alzheimer's, she does not have any risk variants for APOE in the APOE variations, which are the most important variations for Alzheimer's. Not the only ones that matter, but by far the most important ones. However, her score is a bit above average because of this genotype right here. And by the way, having a 1.5 times the average score for Alzheimer's, that means you got a like a 15% chance of getting it, because the average person has a 10% chance of developing Alzheimer's. So 15% chance of you getting Alzheimer's is really high. It's really high risk in my opinion. All right, no micro P, really good. Once again, no micro P, real solid. Not an Asian flusher, lower odds of alcoholism, good stuff. And it looks like slightly less likely than average to gain weight if taken Zyprexa. Alright. And also, not a carrier of Melanesian blonde hair variants, and not albino, really good to know. And does not have any risk variants for familiar Mediterranean fever. Alright, so that was Tatiana. Now we're gonna be moving on to Harley. Alrighty, this is Harley. Let's check her polygenic risk scores. For the polygenic risk scores, she seems to have a slightly below average score for schizophrenia. She's got a below average score for type 2 diabetes, and she's got a very high score for Alzheimer's. Very interesting. We're gonna find out why. So she doesn't really have any genotypes that are important here for mental health. That's a bummer. Alright, we're gonna skip all that. 2 sociopath variants in this variation of OXCR, most likely not sub-Saharan African. Very interesting. Very much in contrast to Tatiana previously. Well, you know, Tatiana's not East Asian and Harley's not sub-Saharan African, so that's entirely correct. Very European kind of genotypes for both of them, but European in different ways. Yeah. Alright, so for hemochromatosis, Harley does not have any risk variants for hemochromatosis. Good, no Celtic curse. And this genotype right here, which is probably the biggest contributor to the reason she's scoring such a high score for Alzheimer's. Alright, we solved the mystery. This genotype right here leads to lower IQ, very interesting. Likely has photic sneeze reflex. That's kind of crazy. Photic sneeze reflex. It's a very European condition, and I have it, but I actually have the opposite genotype here. So I have photic sneeze reflex in reality without having the genetic genotype that typically comes along with it. I have a lot of really interesting genotypes actually. Like I have a genotype that basically says I'm lactose intolerant. Like I don't have the European lactose persistence mutations, and yet I drink milk like every day. So yeah, I'm a man of many contradictions. Not a carrier of Melanesian blonde hair variants. Higher susceptibility to meth-induced psychosis. Alright. And not a carrier of any of the familiar Mediterranean fever mutations. Alright. No familiar Mediterranean fever for Harley. That was Harley. Now we're going to be moving on to Anthony. Alright, let's start with the polygenic risk scores for Anthony. Anthony's got average score for schizophrenia. Not genotyped for anything for type 2 diabetes, and he's got a slightly above average score for Alzheimer's. Alright. It seems that all of them have slightly above average score for Alzheimer's actually. Kind of interesting. Alright. So that's Anthony. Anthony's got a gene Comet-Valmet variation, very interesting. So he's got intermediate genotype between warrior and warrior. He's not genotyped for the main variation in any way that matters for warrior versus warrior distinction, so we can only go off his genotype in Comte. He's got one derived no-go learner variant in DRD2 spirophyllin Pro variation, which means intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptors in the brain, intermediate like schizophrenia, stuff like that. However, this is coming together with AA genotype here. By the way, typically you will inherit the A allele in this variation of DRD2 together with the G allele in this variation of DRD2, or the G allele in this variation of DRD2 together with the A allele in this variation of DRD2. In his case, he's got the A allele here together with the A allele here. That means this linkage occurred sometime in his lineage, or maybe even he is the first to carry it. However, what's interesting with this kind of a genotype is that I don't really know which one is the key here, which one is the one that actually influences the phenotype, whether or not he has more or less dopamine due to receptor sites. Because if this is the one that's the key, if this is the variation that's highest in terms of the p-value or whatever, then he's definitely got increased number of dopamine due to receptor sites in the brain and definitely higher odds of schizophrenia, stuff like that. However, if this is the variation that is kind of key, then in this case, he's just kind of average or intermediate. Okay, what else is here? He does not have the European lactose persistence mutation. Kind of crazy. All right, so nada. None of the Unetice people have European lactose persistence mutation. Out of those I've seen thus far. Maybe I'll get onto other Unetice people and I'll find somebody with the European lactose persistence mutation. Maybe that's gonna happen. Let's find out. All right, for diabetes, GG here, which means actually, yeah, doesn't have type 1 diabetes. All right, good for him. And AG here in Tom, whatever, higher odds of Alzheimer's disease. All right, so this is the reason he's scoring so high for Alzheimer's. We figured it out. He's got GG here. Actually, that's crazy. Oh, that's crazy. So you know how in this variation most people have AA actually, but some Europeans have the G allele present, and the G allele greatly reduces the risk of myopia and improves eyesight. In his case, he's got 2 G alleles, and it's so rare. It's incredibly uncommon. So this guy has got real good eyesight, is what I'm thinking. No micro P, good for him. Increased cranial size and 2% higher IQ, good for him. Impaired muscle performance, likely endurance athlete rather than power and strength athlete, not good for him. Definitely not good for him. More likely to gain weight if taking Zyprexa. Alright. I don't think that would matter because Zyprexa didn't exist back in the Bronze Age. 4 familiar Mediterranean fever. Does not have any risk variance for that. Good for him. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. That's Anthony. Now we're going to be moving on to the last woman. I think it's Stacy. Alright, now we're moving on to Stacy, our final individual. I'm excited to get this over with. Let's go. Polygenic risk scores for Stacy looks like this. So she's got slightly above average score for schizophrenia, not genotyped for anything relevant to type 2 diabetes, and she's got a slightly below average, actually a significantly below average score for Alzheimer's. Alright, so she's got GG in Comte's development variation, which means she's a warrior in Comte. However, she's a warrior in the MAOA, very interesting dynamic. So, all in all, these two balance out. She's probably intermediate between warrior and warrior, just like most people. Not exactly warrior explicitly, not exactly warrior explicitly, just intermediate between warrior and warrior in terms of the phenotype. So, intermediate speed of dopamine reuptake, intermediate number of dopamine, amount of dopamine circulating in the system. Alright, we don't really care about any of that. 7-fold decreased risk of type 1 diabetes, does not have type 1 diabetes, good for her. Not genotyped for anything relevant to hemochromatosis. No APOE2 alleles. Okay, so no APOE2 alleles in APOE, very good. Doesn't have the risk variance for Alzheimer's in APOE. And doesn't even have risk variance for Alzheimer's here, so very, very good, very healthy genotype to have. 2 alleles that protect against myopia, but this is not a particularly important variation. No micro P, real good. Real nice to see. Impaired muscle performance, once again, likely endurance athlete. I think that was all of them actually. What is it with Unetice people and the impaired muscle performance? Okay, more likely to gain weight if taking Zyprexa. Lower odds of methamphetamine-induced psychosis. I'm not sure if I can even say that here on YouTube. If it's a no-no word, not really sure. And no risk variance for familiar Mediterranean fever. GG here in MTHFR, a number of risks associated with impaired folate metabolism. So yeah, she probably has some problem metabolizing folic acid. Real bummer. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Well, thanks for watching until the end. I want to remind you that you can download these samples in 23andMe format from a link which is in the description of the video. And I do suggest you leave a like and share and whatever. Goodbye.